return to the PM's trip to Rome, and I make again the fact that at the swearing in at Government House today, he made an affirmation, not an oath, so no Bible. Have a look.
I, Anthony Norman Albanese, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will well and truly serve the Commonwealth of Australia, her land and her people in the office of Prime Minister.
That's fine. A lot of the Labor people, probably most of them now, don't touch the Bible. But contrast this with how he was speaking about his trip to Rome for the Pope's inauguration.
My mum would be pretty chuffed at the idea that her son will be going as Prime Minister to see the inauguration of a Pope in the Vatican City.
Let's bring in my paddle. Senior Fellow and Chief Economist at the IPA, Adam Crichton, and a columnist at The Spectator, Terry Barnes. Well, I don't know, it doesn't sit comfortably with me. I'm a Catholic, right? And we all know everyone's faith is private and it ebbs and flows. But he put his faith out there front and centre all the way during the campaign. I'd say cravenly to pick up the votes of people out in Western Sydney and Western Melbourne who have a strong faith, but gets there to be sworn in and doesn't want to touch the Bible like it's kryptonite.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, this is a bloke who, when Pope Francis died, said that his mum, the same mum he was talking about, gave him three great faiths: the Catholic Church, the Labor Party and South Sydney Rabbitohs. Now, when it comes to it, yeah, as you say, he was out there trying to put his faith on his sleeve and tell everybody he's a good, faithful and moral person. But when he has the chance to actually swear to God, by Almighty God, he doesn't.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that all he wants to do is actually get on the plane, go to Rome, be basically a celebrity.
A Vatican tourist.
Yeah.
Vatican tourist. Talk to me about the US and China and this, will we call it a rapprochement? Do we call it a deal on tariffs? What do we know?
Well, look, it's certainly great news. I mean, the tariffs were going to be 145% on one side and 130% on the other, and they've come down to 30 and I think 10 respectively, or 20. So that's a massive reduction. It's equivalent to hundreds of billions of dollars of extra stimulus between those two economies. It's a great thing, but it's just for 90 days. So I know Donald Trump calls it, a total reset, but he's the great exaggerator, as you know, and I think you're going to find, more heat and light, in the next basically after 80 days when they come to renegotiate, we're going to see more. I don't think the core issues have been resolved, but it's a good thing and it's very good for Australia.
Yeah.
Because anything bad for China is very bad for our exports.
What do we make of the Liberal Party leadership today?
Well, I didn't have much confidence in either candidate, to be honest with you, Peter. I mean, but look, I'll give Susan Lee a chance, but my expectations of her performing are actually very low in terms of policy, in terms of being able to reunite the party, in terms of keeping the coalition together. But certainly I think she has 18 months and no more in terms of getting the coalition back on an even keel, but actually showing that the coalition, both parties, have the policy chops to do the job, which they didn't show in the debacle on the 3rd of May. But the other thing is neither she or Angus Taylor actually took responsibility for that debacle.
Yeah,
and I think that's something they have to own up to.
Yeah, they can't just throw this all at Peter Dutton. I mean, she was the deputy leader, right? So she's basically admitting, if she's not taking responsibility, she was admitting that she was a fig leaf, a feather duster, that she had no say in the room. That's not what you want in a leadership contender. And of course, she's now the leader. And I have to say, observing leaders, Terry, as you've done too, there's often no right answer, right? There could be 4 right answers. You've got to make a judgment call. You've got to back yourself. And this will be the test.
Yeah, look, I think the worry for Susan is she's been in the Parliament, I think, since 2001.
24 years.
So, and I really don't know what she stands for. I should know something. So I'm very interested as to, what her stance is on immigration, fiscal policy, net zero. But we don't know yet. But I think a leader has to be malleable, and she's going to have to work out what's, what is politically saleable, and to lead the party back from the brink.
Net zero then.
But even today, she was saying, look, I will consult with my colleagues. I mean, she's going to be led by them, or is she going to lead them?
Or the factions, Terry. You know how it works in New South Wales at the moment.
Right, so.
Well, it's the National Party, really, at the moment, where all the policy development is. I mean, they're seemingly going to dump net zero, thank goodness. And I think that they may even drag the coalition away from net zero, the Liberal Party, rather, from net zero. We've got this extraordinary situation where we have Tony Blair on the same side as the National Party when it comes to net zero.
Yes, at Labor and the Liberal Party potentially over there.
So, look, if net zero is not good enough for Tony Blair, the former Labor Prime Minister, then it shouldn't be good, for the Liberals, I think. And that is where they're going to end up.
Do you think they should junk it completely?
Oh, yeah, because it gives them an economic framework to take to the next election. Because then they're clearly not willing to campaign on tax reform or welfare reform because that's just too hard. But I think net zero is something, yes, and very expensive. But net zero is something that I think they can link to cost of living, which is clearly a big issue, and that's that's the direction the world's going. I mean, the so-called transition is slowing down despite all the rhetoric.
And 65% of countries, in terms of the big emitters, Terry, are not even in net zero. So we're the poor old monkeys going down the garden path.
Well, that's right. We've been cutting our noses off to spite our faces with net zero. I think the National Party's got the right idea. David Littleproud took it on board yesterday. Now he's got to take it up to Susan Lee and her party.
I mean, it's a religion, really. I mean, I think humans are responsible for 4% of emissions, and Australia 1% of that, and we're going to reduce that 1% of the 4%. So I mean, it's just comical.
Big Jam Jim, I call him. He's got some pressure now with some people coming in. You know, Dan Molino, a
Which is great,
PhD from
by the way.
Yale, Andrew Charlton, Cabinet Secretary. We might see some pressure on Chalmers.
Yeah, look, I hope so. I mean, Chalmers, to his credit, has said that he wants to make productivity the centrepiece of this term, but he's also said he thinks that he can't do it for 6 years. Well, no, I think he has to move now. I mean, they have a big mandate and they really shouldn't waste. They should do hard things. The Productivity Commission is going to release a report later this year to recommend stuff, some of which will be difficult. The competition policy, speeding up approvals, things like that. So I just hope the Labor Party seizes it because the country needs it. We're in a productivity crisis. I mean, it fell 1.2% last year. Living standards have fallen 10%, and the main reason is the appalling productivity experience we've had.
Gents, you're not wrong. Right, see you both next week.